Asher Banipal. Asher Banipal, who ruled the Neo-Assyrian Empire from 669 to 631 BC, is considered to be one of the most violent rulers in ancient history. The Assyrians were known to be brutal warriors. But even by their standards, Asher Banipal was too evil. He didn't simply go after enemy soldiers like other leaders. He instead often ordered the torture, skinning, cutting apart, and mass killing of civilians. He was also one of the only Assyrian kings who openly bragged about killing women. For example, one carving from his palace even shows soldiers cutting open a pregnant Arab woman when his own brother Shamash-Shamukin, who ruled Babylon, rebelled against him. Asher Banipal surrounded the city for 2 years. His records say that the people inside were so hungry they began eating each other. When the city finally fell, he turned it into a massacre. He claimed that he fed the torn-up bodies of the people to dogs, pigs, and vultures. In other campaigns, Asher Banipal forced Arab tribes to leave their lands, skinned rebel leaders alive, and humiliated enemy kings. For example, he tied one of them to his chariot like a horse. Jean-Bédel Bokassa. Jean-Bédel Bokassa took control of the Central African Republic in 1966 after leading a military coup, and in 1976, he declared himself emperor and changed the country's name to the Central African Empire, even though no other country recognized this title. One of the worst events under his rule happened when about 100 school children were beaten to death in a prison after protesting against expensive school uniforms. Coincidentally, the uniforms came from a factory owned by one of Bokassa's wives. Survivors later said that Bokassa himself helped beat some of the kids to death with his cane. There were also rumors that he kept human body parts in palace freezers and ate some of his victims. Although the cannibalism charges were dropped due to a legal technicality, several people, including his former chef, claimed he had eaten human flesh. Also, Bokassa lived in extreme luxury while most of the country stayed poor. Just as an example, his coronation as emperor in 1977 cost $20 million, which was about 1/3 of the country's yearly budget. He wore gold clothes, sat on a throne shaped like an eagle, and copied Napoleon's ceremony. Even though no foreign leaders came to the event, he was removed from power in 1979 with help from French troops while he was out of the country, and, when he came back years later, he was arrested and put on trial. He was found guilty of several murders, but was not given the death penalty. He was instead released from prison later on and lived quietly until he died in 1996. General But Naked. Joshua Milton Blahi, better known as General But Naked, was one of the most violent and weird warlords during Liberia's civil war. He led a group called the Naked Base Commandos, mostly made up of child soldiers. He was called that way because he and his fighters went into battle completely naked except for shoes and charms, since they believed this made them bulletproof. He claimed he used to be a tribal priest who sacrificed children and later became a spiritual advisor to Liberia's president using black magic to help him win elections. Blah's group committed terrible crimes during the war. If using child soldiers wasn't enough, he also reportedly practiced cannibalism and took part in rituals where he cut out kids' hearts. Some witnesses once said they saw him in battle holding a gun in one hand and a man's severed genitals in the other. In 1996, after years of violence, Blahi said he had a vision of Jesus telling him to change his life. He left the war, became a Christian preacher, and moved to a refugee camp in Ghana where he learned to read and started a ministry. Later, he returned to Liberia and shocked the country by testifying in front of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. He was the only major warlord to do this. He's still alive, even though there are reports of his health getting worse, and he's also never been arrested. Foday Sankoh. Foday Sankoh was the founder and leader of the Revolutionary United Front, a rebel group that started the Sierra Leone Civil War in 1991. His war lasted 11 years, killed around 50,000 people, and displaced more than 500,000. But what was really insane was how his forces used terror as their main weapon. One of the most infamous moments of the war was Operation Pay Yourself, where he told his fighters to take whatever they wanted. This, as you can imagine, led to widespread looting, rape, torture, and murder. Civilians were often mutilated just to spread fear or punish them for voting, and these acts were often committed in front of family members to cause maximum suffering and psychological damage. Sankoh also used thousands of child soldiers, some as young as 8. These children were kidnapped, given substances, and forced to kill, sometimes even being made to kill their own relatives to destroy their ties to the past. Girls were instead forced to marry commanders. He stole diamonds from Sierra Leone's rich mining areas and then traded them illegally to buy weapons and keep the war going. Despite all of this, Sankoh tried to maintain a public image of being a revolutionary. He signed peace deals like the 1996 Abidjan Peace Accord and the 1999 Lome Peace Accord, which even gave him a government position in amnesty. But both times he broke the agreements and went back to war. His fighters attacked peacekeepers, murdered aid workers, and made it clear that Sankoh had no real interest in peace. Eventually, international forces stepped in, the United Nations, African peacekeepers, and especially the British military helped. The British launched Operation Palliser in 2000 to protect the capital and civilians. Their intervention helped bring the war to an end in 2002. The RUF was defeated and Sankoh was arrested and charged with crimes against humanity by a special UN court. However, before he could be tried, he died in prison in 2003 from health complications. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. He was the founder and leader of a group he called the Islamic State, which used an interpretation of Islam that contradicts what most mainstream Muslim scholars agree on. This group declared itself a caliphate in 2014 and took control of large parts of Iraq and Syria. It committed shocking acts of violence that drew worldwide attention. He led the genocide of the Yazidi people, ordered mass rapes and executions, and personally held several women as slaves and raped them, including the American aid worker Kayla Mueller, who died in 2015. His fighters became known for brutal acts like beheadings, crucifixions, and burning people alive. These killings were often filmed and shared online to scare their enemies and attract new followers. He was also behind many bombings, terrorist attacks, and the murder of thousands of civilians. Even when he began to lose territory, he continued to call for global jihad and encouraged attacks around the world. In 2019, U.S. forces tracked him to a hideout in Syria, but during the raid, Baghdadi killed himself and 2 of his kids by setting off a suicide vest. Joseph Kony. Joseph Kony is a Ugandan warlord who created the Lord's Resistance Army, one of the most violent rebel groups in Africa. He claimed he was a prophet chosen by God and said he wanted to create a Christian country based on the 10 Commandments, but his actions were the opposite of anything religious. Under his orders, the LRA kidnapped more than 60,000 children. Boys were forced to become soldiers and trained to kill. The group tortured civilians, cut off people's lips and ears, and destroyed entire villages. Between 1986 and 2009, the LRA caused the deaths of over 100,000 people and forced about 2 million people to flee their homes. In 2005, the International Criminal Court charged Kony with war crimes and crimes against humanity, and he has been wanted by Interpol since 2006, but he's never been caught. His group left Uganda and moved into remote parts of Central Africa, making it hard for soldiers to find him. At its peak, the LRA had about 3,000 fighters, but by 2017, it had dropped to fewer than 100. Even after losing lots of members, the group kept attacking civilians. Kony is believed to have had about 60 wives and fathered more than 40 children. Nowadays, he is thought to be hiding in places like the Darur region of Sudan, still giving orders to the small number of fighters who remain loyal to him. Željko Ražnatović, also known as Arkan, he was one of the most feared warlords during the Yugoslav wars. That's because he led the Serb Volunteer Guard, also called Arkan's Tigers, a paramilitary unit responsible for massacres, rapes, torture, ethnic cleansing, and the murder of civilians in Bosnia and Croatia. His group was known for acts of extreme cruelty, like locking civilians in tiny rooms without food or water, mass executions, and even forcing refugees to fight each other under threat with guns. Before the wars, Arkan was already infamous across Europe. He was a criminal who robbed banks in at least 6 countries and escaped from prison multiple times. He worked with the Yugoslav secret police and gained influence through a mix of violence and political protection. In Serbia, he became a symbol of gangster power, running nightclubs, smuggling fuel, and controlling a football team. He ran the FK Ilok football club, and to win, he threatened opposing players with guns or had them locked up. During the wars, he grew his wealth by looting, black market trade, and forming ties with mafia networks in Europe. He was assassinated in 2000 in a hotel lobby in Belgrade, likely because he had lost protection from Serbia's ruling elite and had become too powerful.